failure yesterday with the team time trial, and it cost defending champion Aitor Gonzalez big time. A puncture bringing him to a halt. Another Spaniard, the gods were kinder, as the first golden jersey found the shoulders of Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. His Once team, riding the Tour for the final time, pushed the US Postal Squad into second. Today, Gonzalez de Galdeano will be under pressure to hold the lead. We're in the hills as the Vuelta goes on stage 2 next on OLN.
The top, the lead.
And welcome back to the second day of coverage of the Tour of Spain. The riders going 148 kilometres a day from Gijón to Cangas de Onís. It's a road race stage, and it certainly isn't a flat route. And the big news as we join you, Mario Cipollini, he left for the home this morning. He didn't start the stage after yesterday's team time trial. I'm Phil Liggett, joined of course by Paul Sherwen and by Bob Roll. Well, let's have a look at the route that they are facing now. As I say, it's not a flat one. We say goodbye to the coast, albeit only briefly, and race inland today, and that's where the hills are waiting for the riders. And I can tell you they're already showing signs of cracking under the strain out on the course today. It's a 148 kilometre stage. Let's have a look at the hills. Here they are. We climb Madeira, Fire and Mirador. Mirador is a first category climb, and the last time we finished in Cangas, Enrique Chima was the winner then, and that was 25 years ago, back in 1978. Let's get to the action then, because as I say, things are happening. Two riders are out of the Tour already. Not finishing the team time trial is Ivan Caranta, and not starting the road race today, Mario Cipollini. The rest are in the race, but we've seen one or two surprises, Paul. We're on the climb, by the way, of the Alto de la Faya, 56 kilometres covered.
Well, as you can see here, these three riders stole a march over the rest of the main field. Actually, on the first climb of the day, they accelerated on the descent, and they've led this race for some time. But the main field, we're not surprised to see, is covered by the yellow jerseys of Team Once, who are defending the lead of their man, the man who was the first across the line yesterday, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. This is Danilo Horillo. He's actually been dropped. He was in the leading group. There were four riders actually at the start of this climb, but there's an awfully big acceleration at the front end of the main field.
The front end of the field chasing hard under the impetus of the Once team, defending the golden jersey of Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. Interestingly enough, Pedro Orillo was the highest placed rider on GC in the breakaway, but he's already been dropped by them, so I'm sure that Once will keep the pressure on, however, and keep chasing that group. You can see them that they'll be coming up just momentarily up the climb themselves in a whole big hurry, because riders are already getting dropped off the back on this Cat 2 climb.
Well, we're looking at the first three riders here, Zabaya, Leiseca and Garcia, and they were about a minute 13 seconds ahead with Horillo. Horillo, as you can see, has now been dropped by half a minute. The main field are, as Bob has said, under the escort of Once, keeping them just within reach, because, you know, this may not be a day for the sprinters, with the Alto Mirador del Fito coming at 131 kilometres. That's just about 17 kilometres from the finish, a little more than 10 miles. There's a chance to see the peloton now, and the boys in Once, a lot of pressure on them right from day one after that lovely team time trial yesterday, beating the US Postal Service's team by 10 seconds. The big loser, of course, was Aitor Gonzalez. He's gone into today's stage a minute and 25 seconds now behind the overall leader, and he'd be very concerned. He's a minute 10 seconds behind Roberto Heras.
This is a lot of pressure to put on a team on day one out on the open road to defend the lead. This is something that Once have done in the past, and I'm wondering whether it's not somewhat of a mistake that they're making tactically, because to assume the responsibility of all of the work of a bike race like this, it really does put pressure on the whole team. This is the time gaps at the moment. The three leaders there have got a 30-second advantage over Horillo, and then it's a further a minute and 14 seconds back to the main field. But as you can see, Bob, on the front of the main field, the yellow jerseys of the Once squad, they are a very tough squad. They want to pull it back to these three riders right now, and I have a feeling that in that leading group, in fact, Leonardo Pipoli somewhere along the lines in fact replaced Roberto Leiseca, who was in this breakaway when it originally formed.
Yes, so we don't see the Euskaltel rider Roberto Leiseca, who I'm sure that Once would chase very hard. He's a solid GT contender himself. You can see some of the riders coming off the back now from behind the peloton. Lyseca would be chased very hard by the Once team because he has won stages in the Tour of Spain as well as the Tour de France. He's never been a huge GC contender, but he's the type of rider that you don't want to let get away and get into that's Nicky Abersold, the Swiss rider on the Phonak team, in big trouble there at the back of the peloton with still one climb to go.
Well, there's a few riders who have gone off the back of this bunch today, and I think we might see another problem here as they start to sandwich down. The pressure's going on. Riders are cracking big time, and there's a problem in the centre of the peloton here. This is what happened, and he's going to have to catch up now. Nicky Abersold. It looks like he'll get out of that one, for the moment at least. So as we look now at the rear of the field, Abersold rejoining here. I think we can have a look at the overall classification. We're going to make good reading for Once and US Postal right now. 7 riders finishing together in the Once squad, so they occupy the top 7 places overall. Their winning time there, 32.01 yesterday. And then follows all 9 riders on the US Postal team, coming in with Jose Rubiera, who led them home yesterday. He's now 8th, just 10 seconds off the place. And a little glimpse there, the lead has just gone over the top now of the Alto de la Falla de los Lobos. And we've got 3 leaders, and in fact I did mislead you a little bit there because they did switch around a little bit. Zabaya is still there, but we now have Aureline Clerc up in front, and also Cesar Garcia and Pepoli. But there are, even I think Clerc may have dropped back now, so we'll try and work it all out as we head up over the top of the climb. I think at 1 minute and 14 seconds, the peloton are very happy with the way this is going just now. They've still got 90 kilometres plus to race to the finish. And of course they do have the Alto Mirador del Fito, 17 kilometres from the line, which could be a big sort out. It's amazing at this time of the year, Paul, how form changes. We've seen a lot of riders struggle on this climb today.
A lot of riders put under pressure on this very difficult climb because of the tempo that's being led by the Once squad on the front end, and there you can see the time gap starting to appear. It's 1 minute and 6 seconds back to Horillo. He's just going over the top there right now, and I would think the main field are really not too very far behind him, because at one stage there were 2 minutes in arrears of that leading group, but the acceleration and the work being done here by Team Once, I would think, has reduced that gap and will be a lot smaller by the time we get to the summit of this climb. But they are doing an awful lot of work. You can see US Postal moving to the front there on the left-hand side. They rode an excellent team time trial yesterday. Better than last year by a few seconds, but still second to Once in a discipline that these two teams really now seem to be dominating.
Well, Once going to have to do a lot of work if they're going to keep this lead all the way to Madrid, and I think they'll find themselves very much under pressure. I was surprised they dropped 2 fairly good riders yesterday on the way to the line in the team time trial, especially Jörg Jatzke had a wonderful Tour de France. He would have been a top 10 finish if he hadn't waited for his fallen leader Joshiba Bolocki. They're over the top then, just about 1:58, just under 2 minutes then for the peloton. So they lost a little bit of ground on the climb. They're now a little bit of respite ahead of them, at least for an hour or so. We'll take our first break in the yellow jersey, or the golden jersey, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. Rejoin us shortly. And welcome back. We're looking at the 3 leaders here now on the second stage of the Vuelta Espana as we head out now away from Gijón to Cangas de Onís, 148 kilometres, and they've done about 65 kilometres of the day. Once just keeping those 3 in check. They're still at around about 2 minutes down, doing all of the work here, and Pedro Arillo is somewhere in between the 3 leaders and the main field. Well, the first man to wear the leader's golden jersey is Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, and we've had Paul Sherwen tell us all about him, his story so far.
It's been a quiet season for Once's Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. After this nasty crash at the Tour of Germany, he missed both the Giro and the Tour due to a broken collarbone. Now healthy and back on the bike, the 58th Vuelta is his last chance to make something of a relatively uneventful season. The 29-year-old has been a pro since 1995 and is known for his time trialling ability. But historically, the Spanish rider has always done well in the Grand Tours, including second place overall in the 1999 Vuelta. He also holds a record for the fastest stage in the Tour of Spain with an average speed of 55.176 kilometers an hour. That was back in 2001. But Once have lost their team leader Joshiba Bolocki after his crash in the Tour de France, and they will now look to Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano to lead this team as the race heads up towards Madrid.
Yes, so the pressure is on Igor now since he got that second place finish in the Vuelta towards the end of the last decade. He says he's a much more experienced bike rider and he's looking good. Well, over the top of the Alto de la Fera, it was Cesar Garcia who led them over the top, followed by Constantino Pepuli and Christian Zabala, or Constantino Zabala rather, and Christian Pepuli. And a minute 10 was Pedro Orillo, and then the peloton just on 2 minutes, officially timed at 1 minute 53. I think they've probably held most of the gains there now. I don't think they've pulled away from them too much. Good tempo riding now, because a long way still to go down to the finishing line. And this Alto Mirador del Fito, Paul, it's actually quite a hard climb.
It's a very difficult climb. It is ideally situated to literally explode the peloton when we get there, because it's a very tough climb. It's around about 8 kilometers in climbing. It goes up 600 meters in altitude, and I think we will see a small group of riders going over the top of around about 25 to 30 men. But what is rather interesting, I think, is the fact that Once are doing an unbelievable pacemaking job on the front end of the main field, and that will put a lot of pressure on them to defend their positions when the race splits up towards the end. And I think this is also going to have an effect, because we're just seeing now little spots of rain starting to appear on the camera. This is the man who was originally in that leading group of 4 riders, Pedro Orillo, Quick-Step Davitamon. He's been picked up by the main field, who are still hovering at around about 2 minutes in arrears of the 3 leaders.
Well, they had closed the gap down pretty significantly to round about 1 minute at the bottom of the climb. Then, realizing that they were so close to the breakaway, they've shut things down a little bit, going at a more reasonable tempo, the Once riders, and the gaps climbed up to about 2 minutes. To be honest with you, I'd hate to be one of these team riders looking at the next 3 weeks at the front of this bike race at a very fast speed. The average length of the stages in this year's Vuelta a Espana is only 130 kilometers, so I'm sure it'll be very, very fast stages, lots of attacking. And I think the last climb on this course, it comes close enough to the finish. There'll be some real attacking on that very aggressive climb, because if you go over there, the top of that climb, the peloton doesn't really have enough chance, because it's so close to the finish, to chase a little breakaway down. So the last climb is a Category 1 climb, perhaps because it comes so close to the finish. Also, I'll bet that it is quite steep, goes up 600 meters in altitude in just a few kilometers. So very exciting finale on order for this second stage of the Vuelta a España this year.
Now, if you're just joining our coverage, let me tell you straight away, we are 2 men down already after the team time trial, but the big news is today, not starting Mario Cipollini. Well, he did just enough, didn't he, to qualify his team to take the start here in the Tour of Spain. The organisers always saying if Cipollini wasn't part of the squad, they could not ride the race. So Cipollini came, he rode just 28 kilometres, and he's gone home.
Well, he did a lot better than Ivan Quaranto. In fact, abandoned after 3 kilometres of riding, and I think his team may well not pay his month's wages this year, because that really wasn't a very professional effort by Quaranto. And I have to say, Bob, I think he's now going to start a spiral down. Although he was at one stage one of the fastest men in the world, he's never lost enough weight to get himself over the big mountains. And to be a successful sprinter like Alessandro Patacchi, for example, you do have to be able to drag your body over the mountains to actually contest the sprints at the end.
Well, there was a point in his career, Quaranto's career, when nobody could touch him in the sprints, not even Super Mario Cipollini. He was so scintillating fast on a quick, big boulevard finish that the Italians love so much in the Giro d'Italia. He won a bunch of stages there, and he was absolutely untouchable. At this point, it doesn't seem as if he's touched his pedals throughout the winter to do the training that's necessary. Mario Cipollini, on the other hand, always trains, always very serious, very late in the season. Like you said, Phil, the organizers not too happy when he announced he would not come to the Vuelta.
No.
He came, but he went home right away. So a little bit of a disappointment, perhaps, for the
He's played yet another ace card there, I think, Bob. But we all know Mario Cipollini. He's reckoned he's going to race for 2 more years. Well, in his case, that probably means about 8 weeks in total, but even so, he's signed for 2 more years. Well, as the race heads on, the gap's still 1 minute and 53 seconds. We'll take another break as the Once boys work out how they're going to bring back those 3 men. And welcome back as we look here now at the 3 leaders. They're still clear. The gap just coming down a little bit here on today's stage of the Tour of Spain. Zabala, Garcia and Pepuli 1 minute and 33 ahead of the field now, because they've swept up Pedro Orillo. We're around the town of Santianes now, and we're running at around about 300 metres above sea level. But this is a very difficult route today. There's the latest coming through now, 1 minute and 16 seconds. So good tempo riding by Once. Nobody helping them at all.
Nobody helping them at all, but it's their responsibility. They are the leaders of the bike race, and in fact they hold the top 7 places in the overall classification. And the result at the end of today, the position in the sprint, will be very important, because there are no time bonuses here at the Vuelta a Espana, and in fact the overall lead will be decided by the position of the men who cross the line towards the end. And Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano is not a great sprinter. In fact, they've got a very good sprinter on Once, and if he gets over the climb, I could see Angel Vicioso being the leader of this bike race at the end of today's stage, Bob.
Absolutely. Vicioso, very good sprinter. He's won a bunch of stages in smaller Spanish stage races so far this year. A quick man, and if he can make it over the top of the last climb, I'm sure he would love to contest for the stage. It's quite a difficult climb before the finish, and he might be one of the few sprinters that can actually get over that.
He was actually the last man to win a road stage for Team Once before they got their win in the team time trial yesterday, and that was on the final stage of the Volta a Catalunya in June, just before the Tour de France started. We're looking here at Constantino Zabaya. He was a very aggressive bike rider last year. It's great to see Kelme always on the attack. We're talking this year about Spanish cycling losing 2 teams who've been in the sport for an awful long time, Once and Ibernesto.com, who will withdraw from the sport at the end of this season. But Kelme, after about 25 years, are still supporting the sport to the maximum. They're always finding new riders, and they're always having this mentality of being an aggressive team and looking for breakaways.
Yes, that's absolutely right, that, Paul. We're looking at Christian Pepoli here. He's never won a race, but he's certainly learning the ropes here. Zabaya had a very good Giro d'Italia, and he's not a race winner at all. He hasn't won a race, in fact, for more than 2 years now. But he is a very aggressive bike rider, always a feature in the long breakaways and hunting for those King of the Mountains points. Incidentally, unlike the Tour de France, the leader's jersey here is a golden colour, but away from the leader of the King of the Mountains, it looks pretty similar. Distance to the finish here, 63.5 kilometres still to go, so we're about 83 kilometres done. Just to confirm, though, that the points competition, well, that is really confusing if you're a regular watcher of the Tour de France, because it's a polka dot jersey, like the King of the Mountains leader's jersey in the Tour de France. Of course, we'll see all of these jerseys more as the race gets along the road towards the Pyrenees in the next few days. Well, they're still pulling away. 1:26. It came down to about 1:13. They've edged away a little bit again. As we see now, Once still doing all of the work. 63 kilometres to go is not very far, but of course we do have this rather nasty climb in the middle, the Alto Mirador del Fito, which comes 17 kilometres from the finish.
It's going to be very difficult. GPS, by the way, flashing up there. The timing system here at the Vuelta a Espana is based on the motorbike cameras. Each motorbike camera actually has a GPS on it, and it then feeds back to the control box at the finish line, and then gives an estimated difference between the times. It's not exact, but at least it gives an indication of whether or not the time gaps are increasing or decreasing. And at the moment, as you can see, confirmation is it's hanging around the 1 minute 25 seconds. And I think, Bob, right now that in fact Once, they've turned off the gas a little bit. They realise that this final climb of the day, and you can see just how precarious it is being a professional bike rider there. You've got to be alert all of the time.
There's a little attack by Zavea going up the road there. He's the highest place rider. It looks like they're going to drop Pepoli there. He might be just going for this little sprint right here, intermediate sprint there. He'll wait up for his companions in the breakaway. He's the highest placed GC rider, 45 seconds behind the leader, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. Here comes his companions in the break, going back up to him, but taking that little sprint. If this lead were to stay all the way to the finish, of course he would get the jersey, but I don't think it's going to happen. I get the feeling that this is a doomed breakaway, but it's a good effort anyways. Get a little publicity for the sponsors there. Pepoli trying to get back to the 2 riders he's with in the breakaway.
So the sprint points then, Zabaya taking those out. He's having a very good race. He took the sprint earlier on today at 36 kilometres as well at Sama de Lengreo. So he's won 2 of the 3. One more at Gombiendas still to come. Right, well, if you think riding a bike is pretty tough, well, try riding a bull. OLM is home, of course, to the PBR. The top cowboys in the world will tackle with those big animals that can weigh as much as 2,000 pounds. Check out all of the action in our second programme of the weekend, coming to you tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific on OLM. Looking here now, little man having to make up time. Christian Pepperly. They're trying to repair the damage after the sprint now, which came at Pedrosa, with 85 kilometres done and 63 to go. There's his position overall. The Seiko team didn't have a good team time trial yesterday. Arriving now at that same sprint point is the main peloton. They've got no reason to race at all, and the gap continuing to be held. In fact, it's going out just a bit, a minute and a half now. So, as they continue to decide when they're going to catch those three leaders, and I'm sure they will, we'll take another short break. The Once boys still have plenty of time to repair the damage. With no bonuses, there could be a new leader yet. We'll take a break. Welcome back. Well, they're still clear, but the peloton is now travelling at a considerably faster pace, and I think the gap will come down pretty soon. Second stage of the Giro d'Italia, Zabaya, Garcia and Pepperly are up there. Now, don't forget, tomorrow we begin our live coverage of the Vuelta Espana, coming to you at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, when we pick up on the 100-mile stage as we go onwards to Santander and back on the coast. Well, there's the peloton now, and they really are going now, Paul. They must only be about 15-20 seconds behind them here.
It's unbelievable, the speed of the main field right now. I'm really a bit surprised on the move coming from Team Once, and you can see a lot of damage at the back end of the main field because the pressure that Once are putting on the front end of the peloton. Cola de Peloton, by the way, means this is the back end of the race. This is the third motorbike out on the course. A lot of riders have been caught out by a very large split, and I would estimate about 45 riders are off the back end of the main field, Bob.
Oh, it's incredible, the pace putting in by the Once squad. There's a couple of riders from the Relax Fuenlabrada team that were involved with a crash yesterday during the team time trial. Santiago Blanco rode for Banesto last year and won a stage of the Tour of Spain. Had a very hard time finding a contract. Got a contract on this very small Spanish team and then crashed out of the Vuelta.
There they are now. We're coming into the town here of Villa Viciosa, which will put us down about 50 kilometres to go, and there is the catch. And I don't think, Bob, that this is the complete peloton. I think they've split in the chase as they come into this town. There will be a change of direction here as they begin to line up for the big climb of the day, and the first real big climb of this year's Vuelta Espana. So they're all together as they surrender. First time we've seen them for a few hours today. Once just riding straight by them and keeping the pressure on, because I really think that this big climb with some 17 kilometres to ride to the finishing line is going to spoil the day out for the sprinters.
Unbelievable speed in this bike race right now. The official time given for the second hour of racing was 41.5 kilometres per hour. But in fact, I have to tell you one thing, it was very, very quick indeed. Peloton Acrobado means the whole of the main field is grouped together once again. Well, in fact, that's not exactly true, because there's a large group of riders have been left behind because of the pressure being set on the front end of the main field by Team Once, who are dragging this bike race along at the moment in excess of 35 miles an hour.
Well, the reason we know that is because if you watch the tail of the peloton, there are no vehicles behind the race. There's a split definitely on, and the race referees are keeping the cars out of it. And I reckon there's probably 50 or 60 riders behind the bunch, which indicates just what a hard chase it was. They were hovering at a minute and a half for mile after mile, and then somebody gave the order to Once to finish it off before the climb, and the pace visibly shot up, and they've split the peloton. But at this time of the year, form, it's a strange thing. As we look now down at the long, thin line of the leaders, and the Once boys are dragging them into that long, thin line. Probably riding into what little wind there is today is a headwind. That's why they're all hiding behind one another. And if anything, that might favour. And that might have been the course of the split, of course, because of the pressure on the back of the race. Now, there's the contours for you. We are heading now very quickly towards the last climb of the day, the Alto Mirador del Fito. It is as hard as it looks.
It certainly is. It's a 9-kilometre climb. This is where we are right now, though. 49 kilometres a meta. That's to the finishing line. That's just around about 30 miles. But it's not going to take them inside of 1 hour, because that climb is a very difficult climb. The average gradient is only 7.5%. But right in the middle, there's a steep part which kicks up to 11%. And that may well be the plan of Team Once today, to try and blow this race apart, because after all, they are leading the bike race and they want to try try and put a stranglehold over the main field. And I tell you what, Bob, I would not like to be sitting in that main field right now because everybody is gasping for breath.
Well, it's a miserable situation to be dropped with a bunch of riders from other teams behind the peloton when a team like Once is making a huge tempo. We saw how fast they went in the team time trial yesterday. It looks like they're still practicing a little bit of that. They're all lined out, and they are really making a huge tempo here. It's a little bit inexplicable at this point in the bike race. You have 3 weeks to go. These riders are absolutely hammering on the front. Maybe one of the big contenders got caught behind in the split that we can tell. We haven't gotten official word on who might be in there, but we can see that there's probably less than about 150 riders still in the front. And here you can see the back group there. Maybe that's why Once is going so hard. See one of the postal riders there hovering near the front. They're going to have a very hard time. That's Chechu Rubiera. Very hard time to close the gap now to the front of the bike race.
Well, there's the long, thin line of the leaders, but the gap is growing now because of the impetus by Once. We know that Chechu Rubiera has been caught in the split, but that they might know something that we don't. Maybe one of the big stars, like Aitor Gonzalez, is back in that second group of some 60 riders. We'll take a break and update you when we come back. And welcome back. Well, the Vuelta Espana is already making more decisions today because that split is still on. We're running into the last 28 kilometres of the race now. And just a couple of minutes up the road is the last climb of the day. Now, we have found out that in that second group of some 60 riders is Levi Leipheimer and also Cadel Evans. There might be others, but one thing's for sure, Paul, the pressure has stayed on at the front here.
Well, in fact, there's a slight change at the front end of the main field because it's not all yellow jerseys right now. We've seen a lot of work being done by Team Once, but they've now been helped by Kelme, when that would confirm to me that Oscar Sevilla is a member of this leading group. But the riders who have been caught out, I have to say, really were caught out by inattention because it wasn't really that difficult to stay in the main field at that point. The crack did not happen on a climb. It was actually on a flat piece of road.
Flat road, and there was a split in the field. Levi Leipheimer missed out on it, as well as Cadel Evans. It's a desperate situation. We're looking back down the highway trying to find the second group on the road. We've gotten a report from the GPS monitor. They're about 2 minutes behind. Here's the 1 minute and 42 seconds to the second group on the road. The Rabobank rider's not on the front at the moment. It's a Phonak and a CSC rider. We'll have to wait and see the other names that got caught in that split in the peloton. It was a hard tempo, but like you said, Paul, it wasn't a violent increase in the tempo, so a GC contender has got to stay attentive at the front of the bike race every single day just to prevent this sort of thing. And Levi, now in a desperate situation, the Rabobank sent some riders back to help him try to get across, but he was unable to do that. And look at the gap is going up. It's up to about 2 minutes and 20 plus seconds at the moment.
This is the Gombiendas sprint, which wasn't the case. Nobody sprinted for it in the lead group. 2:23 is the gap. That has increased quite alarmingly in the last 10 kilometres. Now, they continue to descend now to just 30 metres above sea level, and then they climb up to 600 metres. That's in excess of 2,000 plus feet on the Alta Mirador del Fito. And that's where they are at the front of the race now. Just beginning the gentle slopes upwards. It begins about 2.5 kilometres after that sprint, where the peloton in the back group have just come through. Now it'll be interesting to see whether the climbers launch an attack here.
Comienzo Puerto there, that indicates this is the bottom of the climb, the start of the climb that the riders will be facing. It is a very difficult climb. It's a first category. It's 9 kilometers in length. It's an average gradient of 6.3, but Bob, I think the most notorious part of this climb is actually halfway up, because it kicks up to 11%. And that's when we'll see one or two riders being left behind from this group. But I don't think anybody expected today to be quite this hard.
No, I don't think so. No, the profile looked rather difficult. Didn't count on the tempo being so vicious by the Once team to split the peloton. They kept the pressure on because a couple of guys that were GC contenders got caught behind Cadel Evans, and most especially Levi Leipheimer of the Rabobank team. They have to close the gap before the climb begins, because I'm sure it's going to be a very fast tempo on the climb. Here's a profile of the climb. Alto Mirador del Fito. You can see it's 9 kilometers long. It goes up about 600 meters in total, from 30 meters to 630 meters. You can see the pendenza media, that's the average gradient, 6.3%, and the difference in altitude, 570 meters. So It's a pretty solid climb. We'll see if they start to attack. Right now, it's a very steady tempo being put in by the Kelme team, but maybe they're trying to set something up. Also, all the Banesto riders have come to the front of the bike race as well.
It was Gutierrez, sorry Paul, it was Gutierrez who led through at the sprint, but as I say, it wasn't a sprint at all. That Kelme have kept the pressure on. For me, Kelme are going to be the first team to launch an attack when this hill begins to bite here. Interesting, Eric Zabel has tagged into the back there, Bob, because there's a rider who could certainly clean up in the sprint if he can hang on for the next 8 kilometres or so, and I think that will be a tough call for him.
Zabel's a great bike rider, though. You can never discount him. If he goes over the summit of this climb in around about a minute or a minute and a half in arrears, he's got a great chance of reintegrating the main field on the descent. But I do think we're going to see a very serious battle on this first category climb of this year's Vuelta a Espana. A lot of lime green jerseys moving up to the front end of the main field. They will certainly try and split the field when we get to the steeper part of the course, because it really is a very difficult moment when it kicks up to that 11% grade.
Well, it's going to be a huge test this now for Oscar Sevilla, because he's been out virtually all year with problems. He has ridden only around 4,500 kilometres, a big test now for him. This isn't the first group, by the way. This is the second group we are looking at now, and it looks to me as though they've sat up and are now just riding to the finish. So, big time losses today, I'm sorry to say, for Levi Leipheimer and for Cadel Evans. I think we were expecting something special from Cadel, but it certainly isn't going to be as far as winning the Vuelta, even on day 2. Some big names have damaged their overall positions here. There is the first group, and they're settling down. I think we're going to see an attack from Kelme, and I wonder, we have spotted Aitor Gonzalez in this lead group. Obviously the race leader is here, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. They will have made special note of those riders who've missed the split. A bunch of around about 60 riders behind.
I think the most important thing to remember when you ride a 3-week bike race like this is, in fact, what you have to do is stay at the front end of the main field. We saw that about a month and a half ago with Lance Armstrong. He rode the Tour de France for almost the whole of the 3-week bike race, riding the first 15 to 20 places. That way you don't get caught out in a silly split like this, and a silly split which is going to cost Cadel Evans and Levi Leipheimer, I would say, more than 3 minutes before the end of today's stage, and we still don't know if there are any other big names who got caught out in that rather unfortunate split.
I think we've also got a split off of the back of the front group. There was a pretty big group, 20, 25, 30 riders that were dropped on the initial slopes. Saw Jan Zvodada in there, of course. He's a sprinter, much like Eric Zabel. But Zabel is still hanging in the front of this group, and so is Angel Vicioso, the very fast sprinter from the Once team. If the two of those can stay in the front, I think we'll have a really exciting finish to the line, with the big sprint coming by Eric Zabel. Very steady tempo being put in by the Kelme team. We'll see if there's some attacks when it gets to the steeper 11% part of this climb. It's a pretty long climb, almost 10 kilometers, and then just about 15, 16 Ks to the finish. So Kelme at the moment, though, just a very steady tempo, and they're going so quickly that guys are getting dropped even on these more gradual slopes at the bottom of the hill.
Well, I did catch a glimpse of Aitor Gonzalez just a little earlier on, but he confirmed yesterday that this has certainly been one of the worst years of his career when it comes to bad luck. And there you can see the US Postal moving forward. Roberto Heras is in this leading group, but I think he'll be a little surprised by the fact that one or two of his teammates got caught out by that inattention.
Yes, there's one telecom rider down there, but quite clearly the Kelme boys are feeling very confident here. Now, because there are no time bonuses, obviously, even any Once rider, or at least one of 7, could take over the race lead here if they finish in front of their team leader, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. Other riders, of course, some other teams have got to make up time on the road on the run-in today, simply because they lost time in the team time trial yesterday. But there could be a change of lead, indeed, even if it is a bunch sprint. Gonzalez de Galdeano will have to finish in front of 6 of his teammates who finished alongside him yesterday, and it will go then to count back on points. So the Kelme boys, there's no doubt in my mind they have a plan. Quite what it is, we don't know, but we will soon. So we'll take a break. Come back soon. Back as we are now starting to find this mountain, the Alto Mirador del Fito, beginning to bite. A change of teams at the front, as now iBanesto.com have taken over the work for Kelme.
Serious battle on the first real serious climb of the Vuelta a Espana this year, and obviously Francisco Mancebo thinking that he's got a very good chance of getting himself up high in the overall classification. This looks like Klaus Mola as well of Milanese, the Portuguese team, has decided he too wants to light a fire under the peloton.
Well, he's an amazing man if it is Mola, Paul. I think it looks like him. A bit small for him, but he's a rider who excels here. A Danish rider, always rides well for the Milanese MSS. Doesn't look like him actually, a bit small as he comes closer to our camera. But the race have jumped on him anyway. Now, are those the tall, long legs of Roberto Laiseca now launched up? Bob Roll shaking his head.
Laiseca looks like he's about 95 years old, this athlete. A little bit too younger than that. Sorry about that. But he's putting in a huge effort. This is a Euskaltel Euskadi rider who we can get aside from the shot. We'll be able to see the number and call the rider out. Or perhaps the Spaniards can go to the helicopter. Still a little bit of a ways off, but that's a good move right there. Set up by the Banesto team. It looked like Juan Miguel Mercado attacked, and then it was the turn of the Milanese rider, and now it's Euskaltel Euskadi, one of the most aggressive teams in the whole world. Every time the road points up, they send a rider up the road, and you can see how much damage that's doing to the front group of the peloton. There's only about 25, 30 riders left now at the front. Iker Flores it is from the Euskaltel team. The Basque team, we're heading up towards the Basque country, and you know that they're going to be attacking on the front of the bike race. We'll see if he can be joined by some of the other riders. They could see that this is a very good opportunity. Here we are looking further at the back of the field there. Euskaltel Telecom rider being dropped, and there you can see the damage done in the front by all of these very aggressive attacks. It's going to be so hard for the riders that we're chasing to close that gap. Benoit Joachim, the champion of Luxembourg from the U.S. Postal team, being dropped as well.
Well, the king of the mountains being dropped there as well. Jan Ruska, a member of the Once squad, obviously done a lot of work for the team here this afternoon, but this is certainly splitting the race to pieces. We're going to have a very clear picture at the end of today's stage just who the big favourites are, because one or two favourites have already lost themselves some time on the first stage out on the open road. Levi Leipheimer being, I think, the most serious candidate. He felt very comfortable and very relaxed coming into the Vuelta a Espana, and that may well have been his problem. This looks as if it's CSC trying to launch a man across, and I would expect that to be Carlos Sastre, because Sastre is looking to ride well in the Vuelta a Espana this year.
Yeah, he's come across very strongly too. Remember, we saw him in action in the Tour de France. He won a stage there, and that was a great team race as well for CSC. Tyler Hamilton, fourth in the Tour de France, not riding here for the team, and indeed has been offered a lot of money to leave the team at the end of the year, which he is so doing. He's moving across to the Swiss Phonak team. Well, we're on the climb now. This is not an easy climb at this stage, only day 2 of the Vuelta a Espana, and we've got riders now trying to consolidate at the front. They're having a little battle on the hands to catch Iker Flores, though hasn't won a race, by the way, this year, and he only won one last year, as they're now bringing together 5 men at the front. Sastre, we think, is there. We've got one rider from Once bridging the gap, and we've got a couple of other riders trying to get on turns. One from CSC, will have to be Sastre. 4 riders now. We can get a closer look at them here. Well, it looks to me as though, in fact, that we've got one of the Cofidis riders there too, and I'm not too sure, but it could have been Luis Perez of the Cofidis team who hooked onto the back. And the Demeanor rider here is Michele Scarponi. That's a good choice, Scarponi.
He's a good bike rider, a man who's capable of working very well for Mario Cipollini, and on other occasions. This is rather interesting because the leader of the Team Bianchi is really suffering at the back here. Angel Casera, a former winner, has been put into difficulty on this first climb. You can see here he's not getting into any form of rhythm, and he rode very well at the Tour de France, and it's so difficult nowadays for these guys to peak 2 or 3 times during the season.
All kinds of damage on a stage we didn't think would cause that much. It's short, very fast, and this is a very long and difficult climb. When it separates like this, 5 riders in the front, a small group, and then some of our favorites being shelled out the back, you know that they're racing very hard. And like we have mentioned before, there's incredible differences in the form, especially at this time of the year into September. And it's the Cofidis and the CSC riders that are going up the road well together, and they're dropping their companions in the breakaway.
Well, Michele Scarponi, Luis Perez, Iker Flores, Isidro Nozal is the Once rider here. We're now looking here at Perez and Sastre. As coming back into this picture is Scarponi. And the other rider who's got up into this group here, well, I think I'll give you all the names there with Luis Perez, Scarponi, Flores, and Nozal. Very, very interesting to find that so many names of the season are now in a little bit of bother at the back.
Well, looking now at Nozal in fifth position here at the back of this group. If this was to stop right now, then he would become the new leader of the bike race. He's one of the 7 Once riders who finished together. That bridge over the road there indicating the end of feeding from the team car, so that means they're not too far away from 20 kilometers to go. But you can see the pressure over the first part of this climb really has eliminated 1 or 2 riders. There's last year's winner. He is in the main field for the moment, but still I don't think looking all that comfortable. Aitor Gonzalez there, the number 1 on his back.
And Francesco Villa, who is the rider now, finding that back wheel a little bit tough to keep an eye on. Gonzalez recognises it and gets round in quickly before the door opens too wide. This has been a very fast stage today. They've been running on their fastest expected arrival time all day, and they've run up this hill at high speed, and it's now hurt. Even the breakaway themselves is not that well organised. Sastre driving, followed by Perez of Cofidis, and Sastre full of confidence and really wants to ride well this year here.
Well, they lost a lot of time yesterday. That was rather unfortunate for CSC, because he could be looking at himself as riding into the golden jersey if they'd put in a good performance. Looks like the yellow jersey there on the shoulders of Nozal is starting to recover, and somebody has disappeared. And in fact, it was Iker Flores, the man who started all of the action, has been dropped, and he's about to get picked up by the front end of the main peloton.
So it leaves on the front Sastre and Perez, followed by Scarponi and Nozal. Nozal, the man most likely to get the jersey if he can stay away. The field, this big peloton, continues to thin out rather dramatically. Goodness knows what has now happened to that second bunch on the road, which were timed at 2:23 and could be losing a lot more time now.
Looks to be Angel Casero there is fighting his way, trying to get back into the front group there. He's going to see his hopes for victory in the Tour of Spain disappear on the first day on the open road if he can't close that gap, and he looks to be in a world of hurt right now, really suffering. And here's the front. You can see the tempo. You can see the ragged pedaling of all the riders. You know it has to be fast right now. Carlos Sastre, a very dangerous man. They want to have to close that. This might be all the way back, I think, to Levi Leipheimer's group way back down the mountain. We're just going to have to wait and see. We haven't got a report on which camera is at what point in the bike race.
Well, they're saying this is the group of the leader. No, this will be the actual leading pack behind the breakaway, because we've got Unai Oza here. I don't think we'd have lost too much of him. And also there's Dario Frigo.
Roberto Heras at the front end of the group, so he's quite comfortably riding in the first 4 or 5 positions. He's got a good situation really right now, because he can just ride a defensive role for the next few days and just stay in the main field. But I do think by the end of the first week of racing, we'll have a very aggressive ride when this bike race goes across the Pyrenean Mountains, a couple of days into France, and then back down there towards the finish in Andorra. That's when we'll see men like Roberto Heras coming to the front. The 2 leaders, though, are building themselves a very serious advantage over the main field. Perez on the left-hand side there for Cofidis, and Carlos Sastre. He's got a lot of time to pull back in the overall classification, but this is the way to do it. Moves like this, just eating away and trying to build up your advantage, especially having lost it in the first day's team time trial.
Well, we're getting right up towards that 600-meter point now. You can see the picture getting a little bit misty. It's getting quite chilly up here. And these 2 riders trying to keep the tandem going. Sastre is really very confident. He won the 13th stage of the Tour de France at Bernasque down in the Pyrenees, and that was a great result for him as he continues now. And overall, by the way, they lost 1 minute and 27 seconds yesterday in the team time trial CSC, so he's got to gain all of that back. There's no time bonuses in the Tour of Spain, so he's got to get all of that back if he's going to become the first leader of the Tour after yesterday's stage. And Igor Gonzalez Galdeano knows that. We'll take a break, come back soon. And welcome back as we get towards the summit now of the Alto Mirador del Frito. Still the same 2 riders. It's Carlos Sastre launching the attack here on this second stage of the Tour of Spain. 19 kilometers still to ride. Luis Perez, I think this is his 3rd team of the season, because he started off with Team Coast. That team hit the wall. He went to Al Costo briefly, and now he's riding here for Cofidis.
These guys are really getting together. They both lost a lot of time in the team time trial yesterday. Cofidis losing themselves 56 seconds. Not too far behind them, we've just caught a couple of glimpses of him, is Isidro Nozal. But we're now coming up to the summit of the first big king of the mountains of this year's Tour of Spain. No contest at all there as Perez gets across the line in first place, just ahead of Carlos Sastre. And now they face a rather daredevil sprint down towards the flat and a run in towards the finishing line.
Well, the best placed of the 2 of them is the Cofidis rider, because they didn't lose quite as much time as CSC in the time trial yesterday, but they need nearly a minute. Thirdo, was that the third place? That'll be Nozal, who's just gone over the top in third place, about 20 seconds down, followed by Scarponi there, and Flores. No, he's gone back into the peloton now, and there is what is left of the peloton. It's well spread down the mountain, approximately 25 seconds behind the leading two.
That's Oscar Sevilla on the front there, it looks
he's
like. He's
done well.
And Francisco Mancebo on his wheel. Igor Gonzalez de Galeano following them. Aitor Osa trying to get across. There was the Benesto rider we saw in between the leaders and the peloton. We didn't see Roberto Heros at the front there. This is a very desperate situation now. We're going to see a minute go by. The king of the mountain. Here's our two leaders, Sastre and Perez, really going down the mountain. And it looked like Nozal was trying to bridge up to them, and if they stayed away and Nozal could catch them, then he would be the new leader of the Tour of Spain. But the chase is on. Oscar Sevilla doing a big ride there, trying to get back across to the front.
Well, I'll tell you what, we didn't see Roberto Heras go over the summit, but I'm absolutely certain he was in the group, Bob, because with around about a kilometre to go, he was looking very comfortable, riding in about 5th or 6th position. But you can see the damage that was done. That looked like a few Lamprey riders were caught out as well. I expect that to be Vladimiro Belli, but we're now on the descent. Not that dangerous a descent, but it is fairly technical. As you can see here, we're just leading down. Carlos Sastre in first position. This is a great descent to be able to keep the pace nice and high, and it's also a descent which gives the attackers a big advantage because they are never in sight. There are no switchback descents on the first part of this climb, so you can't see where the main field is behind you. They're being chased at 16 seconds by Isidro Nozal, and I think the order of the day, Bob, will be for Isidro Nozal to sit up and wait for the main group, who are in fact only about 30 seconds behind him, containing the leader Gonzalez de Galdeano.
The biker is very lucky to have some dry roads on this serpentine descent to the finish line. You know that if it was raining still, that it would be quite dangerous, but it looks like the sun has come out for the moment and the roads are quite dry, and they will be very fast but not too dangerous. Let's hope all of them can get down this hill in good order.
Life on the other side of the mountain. A mountain, in fact, Paul, which was Miguel Indurain's last mountain of his career, wasn't it?
It certainly was. The last time Miguel rode the Vuelta a Espana, in fact, he was dropped on this climb, and in fact he abandoned on the descent just before the finish, and that, I think, was the stage up to the great Angliru climb. He didn't want to go up there, and he pulled away from the sport. And that was the last time Miguel Indurain rode over a big mountain pass in his career. You can see the average speed coming down the descent here. They're slowing down to around about 50 kilometers an hour in the corner. That's around about 30 miles an hour. But as they get onto the straights, they pick it up. And we've seen them touching 80 kilometers an hour.
Well, we want 56 seconds, or at least Perez wants 56 seconds if he's going to become the new leader of the Tour, over the first Once rider to cross the line. That's what he's looking for. That's what his team lost yesterday in the team time trial. And at the moment, it looks like he's got 31 of them, so it is possible.
It's very possible, but I think the fact is there'll be a lot of Once riders in that group around Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. They will start to mass at the front of the group and get themselves organised once they get off the rather tricky descent here of this difficult climb.
Well, Perez knows what it's like to win a stage of the Tour of Spain. He did it in September of 2001. He's not done pretty much a little else since as a winning rider, but he's certainly a good teammate. But this time, if he could take out the stage, he could well be the new wearer of the golden jersey. Sastre, though, for the long term, is a man who is really stealing a march over the field here.
He certainly is. In fact, looking back there at Perez, he's always finished high up in the overall classification of the Vuelta a Espana, and in fact he finished 14th back in 2001, and he was 22nd last year. But Carlos Sastre, a long way down, 119th, and the majority of that is really because of the fact that his team lost time yesterday, 1 minute and 27 seconds in the team time trial on day one. This is a small chase group forming off the front here, and again you can see the yellow jerseys of Once looking back to see where their leader is. One of those riders there will be Isidro Nozal, and I think the reason he's looking back is to see just exactly where his team is, but they're just matching really the Bonesto rider on the left hand side, Osa.
Echevarria there, Euskaltel Euskadi rider, very tricky, very good, very tough veteran. And that's Unai Osa, the Bonesto rider that won the King of the Mountains in this Vuelta a España last year. Gotten some mountain points over the top, it looked like. David Echevarria from the Euskaltel team, trying to close the gap. He's a fantastic descender, not afraid to take chances. If he can get some more turns and twists on this descent, he'll be able to get back to the front. He also has a very mean sprint. We've seen him win some good races, 15 Ks to the finish.
Just about 10 miles, well, just inside of 10 miles. You can see the speed on the descent right now. This group is starting to get themselves organized. The big advantage that Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano has is the fact that he's got a very strong team around him. This is possibly, and it certainly, I should say, is the last time we will see the ONCE team racing in a major tour, because they will withdraw from the sport at the end of this season. But what a great team they have been over the many years they've been at races like the Tour of Italy, the Tour de France, and finally here at the Vuelta a Espana.
First time I've had the sun in 2 days of racing, and it's come just at the right moment here to allow Luis Perez and Carlos Sastre to steal a march over the field. There won't be big time gains here now. There isn't the time left on the day for that, but 22 seconds. If he could get 56, he would be the next leader of the Tour. Sastre just a few seconds better than Perez just a few seconds better than Sastre. But watch these riders now. They're skimming off the barriers on the side of the road here. Now David Echevarria, Felix Cardenas is the rider sitting on at the back. Aitor Oza is also here, and Nozal is the ONCE rider. Obviously Nozal out to save the day for the ONCE team, and there's a very tight left hand, and that was Gonzalez himself. He almost lost that.
Well, there you can see Gonzalez is actually off the back of the group. I think Phil, he was dropped towards the summit of the climb here. He's wearing number 1. He certainly has admitted that this is the black year of his whole career right now. We're looking here at Jose Acevedo, another rider from ONCE who was dropped. These riders here are taking incredible risks to bring this whole race back together, and I tell you what, they really are pushing themselves to the limit on this very fast descent.
Well, I've never had confidence that Aitor Gonzalez was going to put in a big defence of his win of last year. He hasn't shown us any reason to think that way. But we're now seeing him. He obviously detached on the climb. He's taking desperate risks now to get back into the action. 4 riders taste 2. There's a peloton, and Gonzalez races to stay in the event. We'll be back in just a moment. And we're back with the Tour of Spain. The runaways are still clear as they continue their descent now down to Cangas de Onís, where the stage finishes today. They're about 5 miles from the finish, 8 kilometres the 2 leaders. It's still Carlos Sastre and Luis Perez. These 4 chasers about half a minute back. Aitor Oza, Felix Cardenas, David Echevarria, Isidro Nozal. And Nozal could be the next man in the gold jersey. And if he is, that'll be the biggest trophy of his career.
9 kilometres to go, but I tell you what, the main field are not really all that far behind right now. There's about half a minute separating the whole of the important part of this bike race. This is only the 4th time, in fact, the Vuelta a Espana has been to Cangas de Onís, and in fact the first man to win here was the great Portuguese rider Joaquim Agostinho. That was back in 1974. And Lopez Carril, the great Spaniard, he won here in 76, and the last man to win here was Sima, and that was in 1978, when the leader of the bike race on that occasion was none other than the Badger, Leblero, or should I say Bernardino.
Well, it's no surprise that Bernardino would be leading this bike race when you see the roads, how serpentine, how hilly, very steep, very difficult, technical, and Bernardino, one of the greatest bike racers of all time. Lance Armstrong's just tied his record for 5 Tour wins with a couple of other famous riders, Miguel Indurain especially, who raced here as well.
Big Mig, this is Ariondas. This is where it all went wrong for Big Mig. I think his hotel was in this town, wasn't it?
It was just outside of this town where Miguel Indurain pulled off the road in the Vuelta a Espana the last time he raced, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get a full shot of that hotel, because in fact it's around about 3 or 4 kilometres to the finishing line where the hotel actually is, and strangely enough it's the hotel of ibernesto.com for tonight as well.
Well, they could have a winner yet, because they've got Aitor Oza in the chase group. They are bridging slowly. David Echevarria would like to take it out in the sprint if he could get close to it. He wouldn't take over the race lead, of course. That would stay with the ONCE rider in that group. Isidro Nozal has only ever won 1 race. 23 seconds the gap. These boys now are levelling out a little bit and still looking good.
Well, this part of the course now will become the disadvantage for the breakaways, because the road is a lot flatter, a lot more open like this, and the group behind can start to get themselves organised. This is Carlos Sastre just moving over on the left-hand side. He's an excellent bike rider. He's certainly prepared to give everything, even though he knows he's not got a chance of taking the lead here this afternoon, as we go under now 7 kilometres to go to the finishing line.
7 kilometres. That is about 9 minutes of racing for these boys on this sort of condition of the road today. Sun now high in the sky and warming them up a little bit. It's been a rather below the normal weather we expect for this time of the year, but we are in the far north of Spain. This is the chase group. David Echevarria, the little sprinter there in the orange jersey, would love this one to come together. They're not that far behind.
26, 27 seconds to this group. Another 10, 15 seconds back to the peloton. We'll get that time gap in a minute. There they are right there. They're going to be 35, 36 seconds behind our leaders and just a few seconds behind the four just in front of them. They'll probably close that gap down, but there's a moment of hesitation. Perez and Sastre not hesitating one bit, both of them pouring everything that they have into this breakaway, trying to stay away to the end, and they've got a great chance of doing that. They'll have about 6 Ks to go the next time we look at them.
Well, looking down there, it looks to be around 30 riders left in that main chase group, so they really have spread eagle the peloton today. Overnight, looking at the results is going to make some sad reading for a number of riders. Remember, Levi Leipheimer, who once finished third in this event a couple of years ago, is in the second group on the road as it was, and could be losing as much as 4 to 5 minutes now with the speed of this race today. And I think they're going to wipe out those 4 riders, Osa, Cardenas, Echevarria and Nozal. Then it's up to whether they can peg back Sastre and Perez. Here they are.
Inside 6 kilometers to go right now. These two riders are certainly digging deep in their reserves to try and stay off the front end of the main field. The main field, which contains the majority of the big leaders, just about to catch that 4-man group. There they are. We now have a situation where there are 2 leaders off the front end of the main group, and now it's a whole group of about 35 riders, just 25 seconds in arrears, trying to pull this bike race together inside of the last 6 kilometers of racing.
Well, it's going to be a tough chase for them. Even so, the capture of those 4 might help indeed those 2 riders in the lead. Well, don't forget, if you miss any stages of the Vuelta, then tune in to OLN every Thursday night and catch up with the latest insight. OLN Summer Sports Zone features highlights, news and results in domestic and international road cycling and, of course, mountain biking. Check it out every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. So these are the 2 leaders looking for the 5-kilometer banner. There is the man who might be losing his race lead right now. He's under pressure as the race heads down towards Cangas for the finish. We'll be there. See you shortly. And welcome back. That is the peloton chasing now on day 2 of the Tour of Spain. It's been quite an upside-down day. A lot of big names are behind the leading group now of some 30 riders as we approach 4 kilometres to go. Is it, Bob?
I think it's 4K to go.
4 kilometres to go it is, and the gap is 33 seconds at 5 kilometres, so they are beginning to stretch the lead just a little.
Well, they don't actually have to catch these guys because these guys are a fairly long way down in the overall classification. The Cofidis rider in first place there, Perez, he's 56 seconds down at the start of today, and Carlos Sastre is a minute 22 behind. He doesn't have to be caught for Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano to stay in the lead at the end of this bike race. As we get to look at the back end of the main field, Roberto Heras is in this group. And I tell you what, there you can see Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. All he has to do to stay in the lead is ride in front of all of his other teammates who are in the group. At 4 kilometers to go, it's still 35 seconds. I think the advantage is going to go to the 2 breakaway men right now, and the decision of the victory will almost certainly fall onto the shoulders of either Perez or Carlos Sastre.
2-second gain in that last kilometre, and that could be absolutely crucial. There's the time gaps for you. 56 seconds Perez is looking for. Remember, we're dealing real time in the Tour of Spain because there are no bonuses along the way to be grabbed. You've got to gain every second with your own strength. Sastre, I think, wants the stage win at this stage of the race. Perez will just help him if he can and try and snatch the golden jersey. Without doubt, the biggest trophy of his career if he can get his hands on it.
Well, they're just getting themselves organised here. You can see almost, or feel almost, the urgency in the pedalling action of these riders. Perez on the front there looks very strong indeed, as you can see at the back there in second position. I think Carlos Sastre taking a few risks to try and get himself a little bit of shelter from the wind. This will be 3 kilometres to go right now. The clock will start again, and if it's still 35 seconds, well, these 2 riders don't have all that much to worry about because there's nobody really got the pressure on the front end of the main field to bring it all back together.
And then it's up to Bob Roll to keep an eye on who finishes best of the Once boys to tell me who the next leader of the team is.
Absolutely. I think that they'll let Igor Gonzalez de Galeano go ahead of his teammates to keep the jersey. We thought that Angel Vicioso, who looked to be still in the front group with about 5 Ks of climbing to go, might get the jersey, but then all hell broke loose in the peloton. The gap came down a little bit there. They lost 3 seconds, but I think they're going to have enough cushion all the way to the finish. De Galeano's keeping the jersey. Luis Perez is winning the stage. Carlos Sastre is getting some time on GC. That's my prediction.
All right. Well, we've got the 2 leaders, and Sastre's looking for the stage win. He's had 1 stage win in the Tour de France this year, stage number 13. Striking a little bit earlier in the Tour of Spain, stage number 2 today. And it's been a tough opening road race stage for the riders in the Tour. Some big surprises out on the highway. A lot of riders found lacking here on the hills of the Asturias. Remember, in the wettest area of Spain here, the race entirely through the Asturias today. But the rain thankfully has kept off, but the countryside certainly looks a bit green.
2 kilometers to go right now, and just quickly to refresh ourselves of what the finish is like. In fact, with about 500 meters to go, there's a very difficult right-hand bend, followed by another corner with 250 meters to go into the finishing line. And fortunately today, it is not going to be a bunch sprint, because if it had been, I think it would have been a rather tricky run in towards the finish. There's the group now coming up to 2 kilometers to go, and still they're holding on to that half a minute advantage, the 2 leaders, so it should go to either of them. And neither of them great winners. It's always very difficult when you're in a 2-man situation after a long effort like that to see just exactly who is going to get themselves the win.
5 seconds in 2 kilometers. That's not enough to bring back the 2 leaders, but it is keeping the race lead firmly in the Once camp. And that's all Once are doing now. They've turned off the chase. They feel as though they've got this race basically under control. Although these 2 riders, of course, are coming into play on the days that lie ahead. And Sastre is a good mountain climber. We know that. So too is Perez. Not quite at the level as perhaps as Sastre, but riders who could challenge over the next couple of days for that leader's golden jersey. Out of the hunt today by a long way, Levi Leipheimer certainly, and others we will look for. We believe Gonzalez is behind as well. He was chasing down the mountain, dropped on the climb at 1 kilometer to go to the finish.
Well, 1 kilometer to go. They'll be looking for a left-hand bend in a short while, followed by a right-hander, and now's the moment when they're starting to think about how they're going to handle the sprint. You can see in second position here, Carlos Sastre is not a powerful bike rider, and just looking at the body there, Bob, on Luis Perez, he looks a much more powerful rider, a lot bigger thighs, a lot stronger, but it's all a question of tactics when it comes down to a sprint like this. It's difficult because these 2 men have been putting a lot of effort into the success of the breakaway for the last 15 kilometers.
Yes, absolutely. Sastre on the front now, just trying to keep the tempo up so he gets as much time as possible. Luis Perez has taken the second position there. He'll watch Sastre. He'll be able to gauge his effort. Here is the last corner with just a few hundred meters to go.
So Sastre has the lead now, and Perez is in a perfect position here. Now Sastre has had a good win this year in the Tour de France. He finished 6th in the Tour de Romandie, but you always want to win. He's opening up the sprint now. Now Perez, I think, with a look over his shoulder, has conceded here. Or is he going to kick again? Because if he can get the win, this will be without doubt his finest win as well. He's not going to go for it. Oh, yes, he is. Here he comes, and on the line. Oh, not quite the wrong line, sorry. As now Perez is going to take the stage win. It'll be his 2nd win of the year. He won a stage of the Tour of Navarra. It's his 2nd win ever in the Vuelta Espana. I'm not surprised he's all smiles at 29 years of age. And boy, did they close that gap down on the run-in as well as Scarponi, I think it is, who comes up on the left there, and Heras is just in there, the points leader. And in fact, we're going to have that'll be Joaquim Rodriguez in that points jersey, Bob, who will be the new leader of the Tour.
Well, we'll have to see what the point situation is. We won't know till they give the jersey out, but that's a very strange situation. Maybe he wasn't totally familiar with how the situation was going to go. It might be the first 3 riders. Luis Perez, however, doing a great little sprint there. No problem at all getting the better of Carlos Sastre in the sprint. He looked to be the stronger, and Sastre, though, gained some time on the field. Let's see exactly what the time gap is. It was about 20-25 seconds by the finish.
We certainly put in a strong burst up to the line here. I think these 2 riders, the most important thing for them was to pull back as much time as possible. But this man, Luis Perez, had the power when it came up to the acceleration for him to get that win. Carlos Sastre, I think, will be happy with the fact that he's got himself some rather sensible time pulled back after losing a lot of time, 1 minute 22nd in the team time trial yesterday. But you can see today's stage certainly did an awful lot of damage. This looks like Floyd Landis coming in here, Bob, at the back of this group, and that is a very good ride by him.
That's a great ride by Floyd Landis, who's slowly coming into form. He had a solid Tour de France, and now he's doing good there. Here's another group following behind. That's probably Aitor Gonzalez.
Well, it looks like Tom Boonen, in fact, leading the rest of the group home, and that would be a surprise because that indicates that Tom Boonen, in fact, is riding very well. Angel Casero in that group, losing 1 minute 40 seconds.
All right, as the field come in, I'm credited Perez with one victory too many in the Vuelta, because that was, in fact, his first ever stage win. So he's going to enjoy this tour. Here he is, sprinting clear now for his second win of the year. We'll take a break. And welcome back. Well, day 2 of the Vuelta Espana is over. Many of the riders still coming in across the Asturias today. This has been a tough opening day of road racing. This rider won't care, though. Luis Perez, at 29 years of age, he gets his first stage win in the Vuelta and his second win of the year. He won the stage of the Tour of Navarra back in May. So he's going to enjoy the prize presentation. There won't be a golden jersey for him, though, because 15 seconds gain over the first chase pack is not enough. He wanted 56, but who knows, over the next few days, you know, he could be a real challenger in the mountains. Well, let's have a look then at the stage result. He pipped Carlos Sasta in the sprint. Alejandro Valverde, the Kelme sprinter, did well there to get third place. Perdeguero and Joaquim Rodriguez, best of the Once riders, should be the new leader. And as we look at the top 10, I can tell you that Levi Leipheimer has finished 152nd, 12 minutes and 58 seconds behind. So that's not oaring well for him, is it? So this is the new race leader now, and there he is, Joaquim Rodriguez, who takes it off his teammates. They're still in the same time, but he finished better in the sprint with that 5th place finish, and this is the biggest trophy he's ever had, I can assure you of that. He's also the leader of this race on points. Let's have a look then at the Pacific Life general classification. Same time, Rodriguez, Galdiano, Nozal, Serrano, because they're all on the Once team. Then comes US Postal's new signing this year, Manuel Beltran, 10 seconds back. We should see Heras in 6th place. Let's have a look. There he is. And Aitor and Unai Osa, the Ibanesto brothers, they're occupying 7th and 8th. And Francisco Mancebo and Mercado, also Ibanesto, still riding very well after that great team time trial. Well, third day tomorrow. It seems like we've been on the road a week already, doesn't it? We're now racing back to the coastline of Santander. No hills of note on the course. Should be a day for the sprinters, but you know, you never know, do you? Well, tomorrow, our first day of live coverage here on the Vuelta Espana, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, as we move on 100 miles or 160 kilometers to Santander. Keep up to date with all the news on the Tour of Spain by coming to our website at olntv.com. Hope you're enjoying the coverage. For Paul Sherwen and Bob Roll, I'm Phil Liggett saying we'll see you tomorrow bright and early at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Goodbye.